Well, hello, hello. Welcome to Wellness by Design today. I'm Jane Hogan, the wellness engineer, and today we're going to be talking about how to live your most blissful life. And my guest today is Jana Danielson. Jana, welcome. I'm so happy to welcome you to the show today. Welcome. Really excited. You and I are Canadians. We really connected when we did an interview for my Becoming Pain Free Summit. And I just love the work that you do in the world. So, welcome.
Thank you, Jane. It's great to be here.
Let me tell the audience a little bit about you if they haven't heard of you before. So, Jana Danielson is an award winning wellness entrepreneur who, through her own experience with physical pain, turned her mess into her message, which has now become her mission. You can see why we're friends. She is an Amazon best-selling author, owner of Lead Pilates and Lead Integrated Health Therapies, her bricks and mortar businesses, and the Meta District, her online wellness community. She is the creator of the Cooch Ball, the world's first patented pelvic floor fitness tool for women. We'll talk about that afterwards. And Jana has coached and consulted with thousands of women from all over the world to help improve their quality of life, their confidence, and their impact in this world. Jana, I love the way you took this experience that you had, you tied it in with fitness, with Pilates, then you keep like doing more and more with that, the cooch ball, knowing that pelvic floor issues are such a problem with a lot of women, but also it's not just about movement. Today we're talking about bliss, right? How to live your blissful life. So how did you come this path to end up talking about bliss that we're talking about today?
You know, Jane, it's interesting because I feel like those of us who are in this space who have been called to do the work that we do to, educate and inspire our audiences and build community around maybe someone's pain experience. That's exactly how I came to it. And you alluded to it in my bio. And so very early on, in my adult years, my pain was digestive. It was undiagnosed. I was on about 11 different medications at the age of 21. And I was finally told by my doctor that the pain was in my head. I was seeking attention and I should have a nice life. And I can hear those words like they were yesterday. And I guess for those of you, right, that have lived with, whether it's acute pain, like you roll your ankle off a sidewalk and you sprain your ankle quite badly, or whether your pain is chronic, where you try and rack your brain, like, when did this start? Why did this start? How did, right? And you're trying to like connect the dots, and it can get very frustrating because, in our reptilian brain, we want to think, what is the cause? What is the effect? Let me figure it out so I can fix it. But sometimes it doesn't work that way. And so, the gift that my pain presented to me, I didn't want to accept it at first, but what it really did, right? It shifted me. I was in the corporate world for just about 15 years, and I loved my corporate job, and I did, human resource consulting, and I did leadership development, and I loved that. But I was really being called to do something different. Instead of helping organizations become healthy through their human resource function, I was really meant to help bodies become healthy. And how was I going to do that? I've always had an interest in fitness. So, back in the day when I was in university teaching step aerobics to pay for my tuition, that's what it was. I was teaching step aerobics, but, it was to go much deeper than that and get an understanding of, here's your pain that I was gifted, and here's how I found my way out. And other people started asking me, and it wasn't always digestive pain for them, but I created this idea that we talk about, or language is very important. I feel like the way people use the words they use, the way they choose to describe themselves or their pain, or how was your day? Was it that canned good, or was it amazing? And then you get out of that autopilot. And I started thinking about the word bliss. And when do you feel blissful? Well, we feel blissful when we are maybe like on vacation, right? When we have maybe a day at the spa where we just kind of turn off the outside world and we can look inward. So I started wondering, why do we believe, or why do we have this system of beliefs where we have to use external factors to experience bliss,
Right.
right? What if we could nurture the 75 trillion cells that make us who we are, and those cells make up our organs, and those organs make up our systems, like our skeletal system and our nervous system, and what if we could, at the very most basic structure of our being, what if we could, the big buzz for the past few years has been self-care. Well, what if we flip the script on that? What if we had a focus on cell care and focused on those 75 trillion cells that made our systems run efficiently, circulation, digestion, elimination, right? All of those systems, then could we not maybe have a sense of bliss on a more regular basis? And what would that do to our mindset? And what would that do to our motivation when we knew we had it within to find that state?
Oh my goodness, I love it. Few things I want to point out there. First of all, that several times you called the pain you had a gift.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly believe that now, that any pain that we have is a gift. It's sort of calling us to awaken to who we really are, because who we've been has led to this pain, and that's not the best version of ourselves. And well, the best version of ourselves is a blissful self, right? I love the way you talk about that. I love the way you go down to that, like every single cell, individual cells,
Mm-hmm.
because if we are blissful at the cellular level, then we as an organism made up of all those cells we're also blissful. So I love that, Jana. So how do you go about ensuring that each of those individual cells are blissful?
Okay. So, gang, today I'm not going to talk about a lot of complex strategies.
Okay.
What I'm going to share with you actually may feel or sound too simple to actually be impactful. And I want to just frame that, because there's going to be nothing that I'm going to share over these next few minutes that we haven't heard one way or another. I'm just going to kind of package it in a different way and help you understand the why behind these super basic strategies. Because I feel like sometimes, we hear the strategy, we sign up for this challenge or that challenge, and we do it. But it's kind of like we're going through with blinders. We're just, we're getting to the end of our 21-day sprint, but we're not exactly sure why and what's happening in our body. So that's how I wanted to frame this.
This is so good, because I'm a real believer in simple solutions too. And actually, engineering, my background is engineering, and we think of that as being complex, but the simplest solutions are always the best solutions. And we are no different as this structure that we are. It's no different. So I love the simple solutions, and I agree. Do not underestimate the power of simple, I won't say easy, simple things.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
let's go.
Okay, so here we go. So number one,
Water.
all right. So let me help you understand this. So it's not a coincidence that our earth and our bodies are both made up of 70% water. Not a coincidence, okay? So did you know that our body uses hydration in a priority system, right? There's a hierarchy.
Yes.
And when you understand this, it can maybe help you to get more clarity on why maybe when you wake up in the morning, you feel like the Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz after a heavy rain, right? Where it takes you 10 minutes or so, right, to get moving, and you're not so like clunky. Our brain is the first organ in the body to be hydrated. It has to be, okay? It's like our central processing unit. So in your computer, if your central processing unit goes down, you don't have a computer that's going to function. When our brain is dehydrated, we start functioning at a less than optimal level. But here's the difference. Your computer just won't turn on, okay? Your body will continue to get up in the morning and do your day, go to bed. Like, you'll still keep functioning. But instead of functioning here, you kind of start functioning here. But then you get used to that lower level of functioning. Or did you know that a lot of brain fog is caused by a dehydrated brain?
Mm-hmm.
So, it's those moments where you're like, did I send that email, or where are my keys? Or, and you just, you chalk it up to a busy life, or not a great sleep, or, some stress with your job or your family. But we don't really understand that at that point, our cells are like in the deep end of the pool asking for help, and you're not throwing, the little donut, the little dinghy to help them. And so they're like, okay, well, we're just going to be like less impactful. And that's what starts happening. So those of you who experience low grade headaches above the brow line or at the hairline, those are often symptoms or outcomes of a dehydrated brain. Think of a plump grape versus a shrivelly raisin, okay? That can give you a little bit of an idea into what's going on. So after the brain is hydrated, the next priority level for our body is our vital organs. So our stomach, our lungs, our heart, our gallbladder, our spleen, right? All of those vital organs are next in line. So can you see how, if the brain is not hydrated, that how do we expect, how do we expect to maybe not be constipated, or to have maybe some bloating or inflammation, or not have the, our maybe cold, tingly feet, our circulation not optimized. It's going,
or no energy.
Exactly, or no energy. Totally, right? So then the bottom of if you think of this like a pyramid, the third layer of the pyramid are the tissues of our muscles, bones, and organs. And that's what I was talking about before, is that where does inflammation occur? In a lot of cases at a joint structure, right? So where two bones meet, and we get those aches and pains, and this is why the hydration formula is so critical to our well-being, because when our cells are dehydrated, they cannot function in an optimal way. And so what are some water hacks? I mean, you might be someone that's like, I don't like the taste of water. Okay. So, and there's lots of people like that. So what can you do? You can diffuse fruit into it. There's certain essential oils you can drip into it. You can buy some of these powdered, be mindful of what they're made up of, how much sugar are in them. But if it means getting water into your body, find what works. Okay. We just can't be like, I don't like the taste of water, therefore I'm not going to drink it. Right. And so one of the hacks that I do is I take my water bottle to bed with me. And when I wake up in the morning, you guys are going to learn a little bit about me. So I've got a little bit of a witchy side. I love astrology and numerology and crystals, and
I love all that too.
All that stuff. And so my ruling number in numerology is 11. And so when I wake up in the morning, I take 11 sips of water. It's just one of the ways I start my day, because the earlier in our day we can wake up the thirst mechanism, the more likely your brain is going to send the message, pick it up and open it and drink it, right? If you're waiting until lunchtime to have your first sip of water, there's been really wasted 4, 5, 6 hours without that hydration. And coffee drinkers out there, or if you love caffeinated drinks, don't despair, because 16 ounces or 2 cups of caffeinated tea, coffee, or caffeinated drinks can be counted into your hydration formula. Just be mindful that anything more than that starts to become a diuretic. It's going to dehydrate you, and you're going to have to drink more water to counteract that extra caffeine. So the early morning hydration is really key.
Yeah, I find that helpful. I take a full glass of water to bed on the night table. And usually if I've drank enough during the day, I'm not thirsty, but it's there if I haven't. But then first thing in the morning, I drink the whole glass, like a tall glass, probably 16 ounces. Amazing. And yeah, it makes a huge difference. I'm like, okay, I've already got that hydration in. Then, I'm continuing, not starting off negative for the day.
Yes,
great tip.
One more thing I was going to mention is a pinch of pink Himalayan sea salt and not enough to change the taste of the water. So I know my mom was saying one day, she's like, my water is so salty. I was like, well, you put way too much in. But you actually literally, you take a pinch, about 84 trace minerals are in that pink Himalayan sea salt, and it'll actually make the water it'll feel different going down your throat. So that's another little hint and tip that I like to mention.
I'm glad you mentioned the essential oils too, because I didn't know about this until fairly recently. So for me, I don't drink alcohol anymore, but I wanted like a special drink on a Friday night or going out with friends. So I started taking like a glass jug and putting 1 drop of orange essential oil, 1 drop of vanilla, and then filling it up with sparkling water. I use like soda stream water, which is still my spring water. And it tastes like a creamsicle and it's so delicious. I feel like that is a treat. I don't really feel like I need to have anything else. So, and I didn't know about that you could drink essential oils, but this is like 2 drops in a whole big jug. It's hardly anything, but so much flavor. Okay.
And it's important. It's important to mention that not all essential oils can be, used that way. So always make sure to check and do your due diligence to make sure it's safe to drink.
Yeah. I think lemon and lime are okay too. So that's the recipes that I've seen have been lemon, lime, orange. And vanilla.
Yeah.
So I kind of know those ones are safe. I probably wouldn't put like tea tree oil. I can't imagine that would even taste good. But yeah, we're not going to put all essential oils in there.
No. All right. So are you ready for the next little hack?
Yes.
Okay. So obviously as a Pilates instructor, Joseph Pilates has been, he's the man that invented the whole system of Pilates. In his book called Return to Life, one of my favorite quotes from him is, breath is the first and the last act of life. And somewhere in the middle, we forget how to do it.
So right? True.
And if you watch a newborn baby breathe, lay them on their back, watch their belly rise and lower. And especially as young women going through our teenage and early adult years, we are conditioned to like suck our belly in, think back. I mean, I was a grad 91 for me. That was my high school grad. So I was in the age of acid wash jeans. I would lay on my bed with my coat hanger zipping up my zipper. You couldn't zip it up with your fingers because your pants were so tight. You had to lay on your bed to zip them up, right? And so here's the thing, everyone. The diaphragm is our main muscle of respiration. The diaphragm is like it looks like an umbrella, an open umbrella or a mushroom cap that lives inside of our ribs, right? And our body cannot be blissful when those cells are not hydrated and oxygenated. They're two very basic concepts. And so when we breathe in through our nose like we're smelling a plate of fresh baked cookies and exhaling out of our mouth, just like at the end of the day, we are in that moment, we're actually taking in 600% more oxygen. So think about what that does for our cells when it's like CPR for our cells, essentially. We're getting those oxygen stores, replenished. And what's really important to know is that the exhale phase of breath is just as important as the inhale phase of breath because it's the balance of the oxygen and the carbon dioxide. And so the breath, the function of breath, my little hack is 3 times a day, morning, midday, and evening. If you can inhale through your nose and exhale out of your mouth like 10 to 15 times, not only is that going to be oxygenating your cells, the physiology of that, how it's also going to be tapping into your parasympathetic nervous system, which is going to bring you down a few notches. It's going to calm your brain. So that little, keep that little ace in your back pocket, because in those moments where you feel like you're getting wound a little bit tight and the word bliss is the furthest, emotion that you are experiencing, you always have control over your breath. And that is one way, like I can't even tell you, if we made like a brainstorm list of what diaphragmatic breathing does in the body, it's like, it's huge. I mean, you think about our lymphatic system, which is our body's garbage disposal system. The lymph system doesn't have its own pump, so it can't work properly without breath. Like that's so key to understand, is that we become toxic beings, right? in a way because that lymph system isn't doing its job properly. So that's what I mean. It's the simplicity of just getting these things on your radar. And I just read a stat that said one of the reasons that is very challenging for us to change, and why by Groundhog Day over 80% of New Year's resolutions have gone by the wayside, is because of the 60 to 70,000 thoughts that we have in a day.
Yeah.
80 to 90% of them are the same as yesterday, and the same as last week, and the same as last month, right? So how do we change that? We change that by bringing, Jane, you were mentioning before, like you are a proponent of the simple, like the simple shifts.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, we're going this way, so now if I want a blissful life, I have to go in the completely opposite direction. We just have to slightly
little course corrections.
Little course corrections. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what I love about what you're talking about here too is you're also creating new habits, right? It's when these become habits for us that we more often are moving into that blissful state with the breath, with being hydrated, and that's taking us on those little course corrections in the right direction. So I love those simple tips, Jana. Ah, beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So when we do these two things, we are helping ourselves become more blissful. And when we do that, our whole organism is becoming more blissful and our whole life is becoming more blissful, starting right at the cellular level. Yeah, love it.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And then it's almost like a ball that is starting to roll downhill. When you start, like, don't do 10 things, right? Do one thing today. Make one choice that is going to impact, what your body is like tomorrow. Just do one. Maybe that's drinking water. Because once you start to get some momentum with these habits, then you can start to layer, right? Then it's movement. Well, how do we bring movement into this equation? And as a Pilates instructor, I'm not going to let an opportunity go by where I can talk about spinal movement, because spinal movement is, Joe Pilates also said that the health of the body is dictated by the health of the spine. So when we have a spine that is supple and can move in different ways and can absorb sometimes the bumps and bruises of life, we are more likely to have a higher quality of life, to up level ourselves as human beings. And when life does throw us those curveballs, because it will, your body can be more resilient and can be there to serve you in those moments where you're not sure what's going on, or you don't have clarity on whatever it might be, a personal situation, a work situation, a health situation. And so the Pilates recipe for a healthy spine includes 5 movements. Okay. So the first one is spinal flexion. So if we're sitting here watching this, if you take your tailbone, okay, visualize your tailbone at the bottom of your spine, and if you just kind of tuck it between your legs a little bit, just make this little scoop. Okay. You can't see it in my body, but that little scoop is called spinal flexion. Okay. When we tuck our tailbone between our legs, you can feel a little stretch in the low back. It works on those bones, the lumbar vertebrae, and it starts to create some blood flow to the area. We get so locked into our low back because of poor posture, seated and standing, the shoes we wear, old sports injuries, having babies, all those things, okay?
The chairs we sit on.
Yes, exactly. So the spinal flexion is just a simple tuck of the tailbone between the legs. Spinal extension is a heart-opening exercise where, if you think of zipping up a jacket, when you're zipping up that jacket and you continue to zip as if you were zipping up to the sky, it's this opening up of the front of the body, okay? So we open up the back of the body with flexion, we open up the front of the body with extension, and then we add rotation, which is movement number 3, so basic twisting of the spine. We add side bending, so it's just reaching as if we're reaching down toward the floor, and try to keep those butt cheeks planted on your chair. Don't let them lift. Now, the last one is hard to show. Imagine laying on a mat. Imagine your knees bent with your feet on the floor. And if you were just to float your hips off the floor into a bridge position where the tailbone gets just higher than the heart, our planet is we live on a planet with gravity. Gravity starts working in a different way on the spinal fluid and our blood flow, and it gets to the spine and the little intervertebral discs, which are like little jelly donuts. They get a different kind of nutrition when our spine is inverted. And so that can really take minutes a day, 1 minute really. So when you're at your desk, just a little bit of moving can go a long way to making the body feel rejuvenated and move you into that blissful state.
Mm. Really good. And you can do all of that, like aside from the bridge pose, most of it while you're sitting. So you could do it
Absolutely.
in your car. You could even do it standing while you're waiting in a line somewhere. So you just need a little trigger to remind you, oh, you can try these.
Exactly.
Really like it. Jana, sometimes it didn't happen to me today because I've already done 2 yoga practices because I did my own and then I taught one this morning. But sometimes if I haven't moved in a while, I'll notice little cracks. So I'll notice even my lumbar spine might go, or,
Yes.
when I'm turning it might crack. Is that anything to be concerned about?
No, I call it our internal chiropractic adjustment, right? Like it kind of just happens. Like, I mean, I never want someone to force it, right? Like I know sometimes my husband will say to his mom, "Can you crack my back?" And he'll cross his arms and she will come and give him this big bear hug. And I'm like, like as a clinic owner with chiropractic, doctors in my space, I'm like, please don't do that. But sometimes when it happens naturally,
Yeah.
that is a different story, right? That is the body, really, like you said before, it's course correcting. Um, Obviously, if there is, sharp and shooting pain around that movement, yes, you might need to get that checked out. But
Mhm.
if it's a matter of, sometimes you just reach down and pick something up and you just get this little all the way up your spine and you're like, oh, I always say that those are, your body's internal chiropractic system doing its job.
Okay, great. I know some people may have that question, so that's
Yeah.
why I asked that.
Yeah.
So we've been talking a lot about the physical, but of course, this ties in with the bigger part of ourselves, right? Our mental and spiritual aspects. How do you see all that coming together?
So it really is, we talk a lot in Pilates and in yoga, right, about body, mind, and spirit. And once you understand that holistic health sees the body as a being, I'm sure most of us are. There was a saying that I heard that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, right? We may have heard that before. So what does that mean? How do we make sure that we are serving in a way on this earth, whatever you've been called to do? And that's what I believe is that, the body and the mind and the spiritual aspect or the spirit are so interconnected. And when you think about the mind as like the neocortex, that thinking analytical part of the brain, and you think about the feeling part of the body as, that limbic brain that just has these yummy experiences. And then you think of, the cerebellum, which is where we consolidate memory. And it's really where our wisdom is being built as we go through life. You can map it back to those. It's almost like we have 3 brains within one.
Mm.
And when we find these simple strategies, ladies and gentlemen, we do become more whole. We do create a physical experience that supports the the emotionality of our body, that plugs into, the spirituality and how we shine as individuals. So whether you are someone that's very, a black and white thinker and you're like, nope, I just want to do my yoga practice and my Pilates practice because it makes me feel good. I don't want to know about anything else. I just know I feel good when I do it. Or if you're on the other end of the spectrum where you're like, I feel more whole. I can't really I can't really write it down in words, but it's the way I feel and it's how I show up in the world. Wherever you are on that spectrum, when you understand how the 3 pieces work so beautifully together, almost like a braid in a woman's hair, right? Um,
Mhm.
that's when it becomes just this beautiful part of, like you talked about before, Jane, that, it becomes a part of who you are. Those habits become a part of your personality. And you might have people say, oh, geez, Jane, you've changed, or what, you seem so happy, you seem so blissful. And it's not seem so, because you are. Because
Mhm.
right from that physical structure through to the emotionality and the spirituality, you're continuing to evolve. So it's never too late. Never too late.
Love it. And sometimes people will say, I'm sure you've heard this, and I've heard this, like, you look like you're glowing. And I think when you do start getting those cells like firing the way they're supposed to, that we do start glowing from the inside, and then it does radiate outside as part of the entirety of who we are, our mind, body, and spirit. So love, love, love all that. Jana, I always ask my guests one last question. We're already up to 30 minutes. Can you believe that? It's kind of crazy. So this show is all about living intentionally, because I believe that we need to create, if we want to create a different version of ourselves that's pain-free, then we can't be thinking and living the same way that we have been. We need to intentionally create a life. So the one last question I always ask is, what's one action someone could take today to improve their health and really change their lives? So I know you've really talked about these today. So could you pick just one?
Yeah. You know, it really, for me, I'm going to pick two.
It's okay. You can pick
Um, it's the whole concept of cell care. It really, really is, I've mentioned this before, but when you can understand that cell care plugs into every other aspect of our life. So, and maybe if you have your water bottle beside you right now, maybe we can all do this action together and have a sip of water.
I don't have my water here.
Okay, join me, everybody. There, Jane took a virtual sip. And that's what it is, right? It's what choice can you make right now? And sometimes, gang, sometimes that choice is, I do want to have some of those Maynard's fuzzy peaches instead of a banana, because I really do like the fuzzy peach candy. But when I have those fuzzy peaches, I have those fuzzy peaches, right? I smell them, I taste them. My family relocated to Mexico, so all the Canadians out there, we don't get Maynard's fuzzy peaches or Swedish berries here. And so that's the other thing I'd love to leave the audience with, is just, when you live intentionally, it means that you live within the framework that you are creating for your future self. And you have to have fun and you have to enjoy. It doesn't mean limiting, or this is a green food and this is a red food, or I overindulged today, so now for the next 3 days I have to be completely strict. And I mean, if you're here in Jane's community, you understand that, right? You've been drawn to her because of how she shows up. And so, Jane, I just want to thank you for allowing me to share your stage with you today.
Oh my goodness, this has been so good. And I love your message. And if anyone wants to learn a bit more about Jana, well, you can sign up for my summit, Becoming Pain Free, Healing the Root Causes of Chronic Pain. It's July 18th to the 24th. You can watch it free. Forget what day Jana is on. Maybe day 4, day 5. I can't remember. But anyway, I'll share the link. But also, Jana, where can people find you directly? What's the best place to find you?
Yeah, so you can, I mean, if you're interested in what I do, metadistrict.com or coochball.com is where you can find more out about me. But if you want to connect with me, just info@metadistrict, that's meta with 2 T's, info@metadistrict.com. I see all of those emails, so I'm happy to connect offline.
We're going to have to do another show
We
about
will.
the cooch ball.
We
So,
will.
yeah, this is just so that people know a little bit about it. Jana designed this to help women strengthen their pelvic floor, and you just sit on it by
Sit and
sitting on
breathe.
it.
Yep, sit and breathe.
Yeah. So we'll have to do a show just on that, Jana, because, well, we had so much to unpack today. But I love the work that you're doing. You're such a gift to the world and such a bright light. And I love that you've come right back to the basics and talking about bliss right down to the cellular level. It's such a gift to the audience. So thank you so much for being a guest on Wellness by Design today. Bye, everyone.